podcast. My name is Jack McLean. I'm your host, and today I'm lucky enough to be joined by Simon Kearney. He will discuss everything that you need to know when it comes to training athletes and helping their performance around athlete readiness to perform, not just looking at the physical parameters, but also how their life stress can impact their performance. And we'll also touch on some tips for high performance staff and support staff on how they can manage their stress levels to ultimately make a big impact at the footy club that they're working at. So whether you're a parent of an athlete, a leader at your footy club, you'll definitely get some takeaways here. If you are tuning in live, feel free to send through some questions and we'll be able to find some time a little bit later on. But welcome, Simon. Thanks for jumping on, mate. Really looking forward to our chat.
Jack, thanks, mate, for having me. Been following what you've been doing along the way and your podcast, mate, and appreciate the offer to come on.
Fantastic. Good to hear someone's listening. But for those that aren't aware of your background, mate, no doubt our AFL circles are, as well as obviously working rugby, tennis Australia, and across different sports in NBL as well. But for those that aren't aware of your background, mate, where did it all start? Your passion for high performance sport, and obviously different work experiences you've had along your journey, building up to now consultancy and running your own business.
I feel a bit old, Jack, to be honest, but I born in Ballarat and thought, you know what, I loved all the keeping fit and played a lot of footy growing up and everything. I thought, well, I'm not going to be good enough to play AFL as a player, so I really wanted to get into the strength and conditioning, the high performance and fitness world. So ended up, I was at my first opportunity with the Melbourne Footy Club under Neil Danaher for about 5 years as the young rookie S&C coach coming in, and it was awesome. As you know, mate, when you're starting off, you're doing a fair bit of everything in the gym and running sessions and nutrition stuff and you name it, doing everything, which was great for about 5 years. And I coincided that with in Melbourne Tigers in the NBL. So we're talking back in 2000 to 2005, roughly. So running the whole fitness department there. I was pretty young, was pretty scary, but learned a lot during the sort of Lindsay Gaze, Andrew Gaze, and Bradkey and Copeland era, which was fantastic. And then ended up on the tennis tour with Tennis Australia from about 2005 to 2010. So trained Alicia Mollick for a number of years on the road with her, which was great. And then we headed up our national tennis academy with Jason Stoltenberg, based here in Melbourne. So all the best juniors basically came here and trained out of here. So I was head of high performance there. And then that took me to, which was all fantastic, different sports, learned a lot in different ways about training athletes and monitoring athletes and communication, which was really big. And then had an awesome opportunity, a few years at Melbourne Storm as in the sports science department and conditioning department there. Where I met some fantastic people and had some great success, which was awesome. And then ended up at St Kilda for about 7 or 8 years in conditioning and sports science there as well. So about a 20-year career in sport, and then started a wellbeing business with my business partner, Jerry Ryan. So Jerry part owns Storm and big Saints man and owns JK Caravans and a number of other businesses. So started a wellbeing business with Jerry in businesses and work life in work. We've got about 50 clients now at the moment with across all workplace wellbeing. So really spreading the love, mate, pretty much in terms of all of that and taking those strategies we learned out in sport and brought that out to the real world. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. And obviously, we're talking off air about the benefits of not just working in one sport, but if you do get the opportunity to expose yourself to different sports. Was that an intention of yours, before you started, or did a mentor sort of help plant the seed, or did things sort of fall that way for you?
Great question, Jack. Actually, it was more through opportunity. I reckon I got my first gig in AFL, and then Paul Ford, who was the head of fitness at Melbourne, had some hookups with the Melbourne Tigers. As you know, mate, when you're that age, that young, you need a bit more money to pay the bills. So I got an awesome, amazing opportunity to work with that caliber of NBL team, and then I had the opportunity there through meeting people to work in Tennis Australia, and was sort of there where I thought, I've learned so much out of AFL and then out of basketball, and learned a lot out of tennis as well. And then got out of tennis. My family were pretty young. My first child was born. I was on the road 20 or so weeks of the year on the tennis tour. So that's pretty full on. And I need to be around a lot more. So opportunity came at Storm, and then an opportunity came to get back into footy, and again less travel with another child on the way. So some of it opportunity, some of it just sort of through lifestyle needs, and but taking and learning a lot in each of those environments. So becoming a bit more holistic, I think, in my thinking and dealing with players and staff. So learn a lot of what to do and learn a lot not to do in all of those different environments. Yeah, it was really fantastic and very interesting. Yeah.
And obviously a range of different world-class environments there, with the topic today being around well-being and how your life can impact your performance, whether it be staff or whatever your performance looks like, corporate, and obviously athletes. Who was the most influential sort of people mentors, if you like, that shaped that importance for you, or what experiences, I guess, really made you recognise that this is a big space to focus some energy on?
My time at Storm was fantastic. Frank Panisi and Craig Bellamy were really good in terms of, there's more to just training athletes. It's getting to know more of them off the field than just on the field. I learned a lot of that with tennis through Alicia Mollick, in that what you do off the court can also affect how you perform on the court. Again, little micro moments at the Saints as well with Alan Richardson. Richo was really big in that space as well, and Rats in that space of looking at the athlete more as a holistic being. And then it certainly went to a whole new level when we got into the Readiness field. But there's the father-in-law's Mick Malthouse as well. So Mick's taught me a lot in that space, certainly around what you do off the field, and how stable you are off the field has a big bearing on how you perform on the ground as well, or you perform at work, in business, or whatever it is as well. So some really influential people along the way, and learn off them from viewing what they do, which is and coaching how they coach and seeing their habits, but then also that can be learned over time, but then also having some, very deliberate discussions. Jerry Ryan's been really great. Jerry, as I said, a business partner, is very big on, making sure that people are happy with in and out of work as well, to get the most out of their performance. So it's, some quite influential teams and people and moments along the way, but certainly the take home across all of that has been not to work in silos in terms of intervening and educating, trying to look at everyone and look at the team and look at individuals as a whole being. They've got a life outside of work or a life outside of sport, and that has a heavy influence on how they perform within their job or within their sport, and vice versa. They if things are struggling, or you're not playing well, or you're having a rough day at work, normally the dog cops are on the way in the door at home as well. So it's the workplace and the private life well-being are quite go hand in hand.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, mate, and definitely resonates, and no doubt does with the listeners as well. No matter what sort of perspective, I guess, you're listening to it, the holistic approach generally is the most effective. And it probably, especially nowadays, seems to be that most programs will value it. But what clubs or organisations, businesses, what do they do differently compared to everyone sort of has their values on the wall, and connection and cohesion is an importance, and values it for team performance. But what are the best organisations do differently to others, do you think?
Again, great question, Jack. I think both in sport or business, it starts with leadership. It's huge. So I talk with our readiness business now with our clients. Our clients are the most engaged, and in terms of culture, do the get the most out of their staff is they have the best leaders in place, and the leaders provide a environment where it's sort of safe to speak up. It's safe to and a very solid understanding that staff and individuals have a life outside of work, and making sure that they're not very not so much checking up on them, but being able to check in on your staff and making sure they're clear on what they need to do. The door's always open. And again, I thought Melbourne Storm for me was a fantastic organisation with that, whereby you want to go that nth degree for the players and the staff, because they know they've got your back as well. So the leaders at Melbourne Storm were really good. They put just as much time into the staff and making sure they look after the staff as they do the players, and I certainly sort of try to take that into my career as well, in sport after that. But yeah, the take home to answer your question is the organisations who get the most out of their people have fantastic leaders in that space. We've got your Ferguson Blair Bakehouses are a good client of ours at Readiness, and really led really well there by Steve Blair and Simon Campbell there, who head up Ferguson Blair Bakehouses. You may have heard of them, but they're practice what they preach in terms of well-being, and a lot of clarity, a lot of communication, a lot of safety around the organisation to be yourself and let you work within your means, and to get the best out of yourself, and yeah, good rules and regulations for the team as or all of the staff or all of the team as a one, but then being able to modify and mold and have individual sort of rules and regulations almost for each person, because everyone's quite different as well. So the best coaches I've dealt with, obviously from a cultural point of view, is there are team rules and team values that are non-negotiable, but being able to know your players well enough to set up an environment at the club and away from the club for them to get the best out of them, while still staying within the realm of the team culture and the team values, I think is the best way to go.
And to get that sustainable success like the Melbourne Storm, do you need different leadership styles in different roles to complement each other, or is there a healthy mix there that if you're building a club from scratch that you look to with personality traits and different types, or is it more just
Definitely, Jack. Yeah, I think, and it's the same in any organisation. If you've got 35 players in NRL, roughly 45 in AFL, you could have a Davis Cup tennis team of 4 or 5. You could have a business of 100 employees. You've got 100 different personalities, 100 different ways that people like to perform. And some people in sporting sense, some coach or some players react better to, I call them the hitters or the huggers in terms of coaches. Some players can absolutely cop a hit and some really strong feedback. Some players don't like that and don't perform well under that feedback and require a bit more of a hug and a bit more of that personal aspect. So knowing your players and understanding and either having, back to your point, either having different personalities as leaders within the organisation is really important, or having less leaders in the organisation who can quite agile and can adapt their feedback and adapt their leadership style to suit individuals and certain teams is really important. But I think the one size fits all model of leadership is probably out the window a little bit. But obviously, you have your business and team values that everyone needs to abide by, but how they get delivered and how the communication gets delivered and on an individual basis needs to be quite agile around that to suit the individuals. And I think it's certainly heading more and more in that direction. Yeah.
And going back to your career, mate, highlights that you're sort of most proud of, or spring front of mind when you're reflecting?
I'm actually sitting in my home office at the moment. I'll put a few things up on the board. Certainly my first my first year and some early success with the Melbourne Tigers in the NBL was always good. We had a few overseas trips when I was very, very young. I was sort of 20, 21. Look, with a fair bit of pressure looking after those sort of big names, which was great. Head was spinning a fair bit, but still got great relationships with and WhatsApp groups with those boys still. That was 20 years ago, 25 years ago. So that was great. Certainly in the tennis days, a lot of travel and some really good success with Alicia on the road, which was fantastic. Junior players coming up through the ranks there, and we got the premiership in Melbourne Storm in 2012, which was really good. Saints was good. You know, we made finals a couple of years there, but had some great progressions with some players coming through, and we did really well, I think, in the high performance department there with injury rates and stuff like that. We had we led the way in a lot of that, and starting my own business, with Paul Francis and Jerry Ryan's been probably one of the biggest things I've done. That's for sure. But yeah, not everything needs to be wins in terms of premierships and stuff like that. It's certainly, as you know, Jack, in our field, it's seeing young players progress or rehab players rehabbing back to not only rehab back to play, but rehabbing back to perform is a really good little win along the ways. You'd certainly understand, mate. They're a lot of those sort of behind the scenes wins are always sort of good in our space, I think, as well. And when you put a plan together with a really good team, and it comes off, they're huge wins, I reckon. That don't get that are sort of all behind the scenes type stuff, but all those quiet wins, I think, are really, really good. And stacks and stacks of mates and friends along the way, I think, are really big wins as well.
100%, mate. No, well said. And obviously, in high performance sport, you're sort of living on the edge and pushing boundaries, as well as no doubt when you're consulting and working with in the corporate world and schools, and everyone's looking to get better and maximize their time. What have been the biggest challenges you've faced, whether it be from professionally, in professional sport or from a business point of view that you sort of learned from or grown from?
Yep. Certainly in sport, I remember at the Saints, we had a phase there. It's every fitness guy's worst nightmare. We had a few hamstrings and I think we had 3 or 4 hammies in about 2 weeks. So I always remember that block. So we're all, God, what's going on here? What's happening? We're getting pressure. You're getting built up in the media or what's going on. So you're those negative aspects or those challenges always sort of stick in the head. Certainly around in tennis days, just the long travel. Sort of had 5 or 6 years there, and they were always challenging. Certainly towards the end, when the young family and the kids were being born and being away for such a long time, they were sort of the challenges there. I sort of felt within that aspect of work. It's certainly more recently, the unknown of starting a new business. I'm like you, Jack, just a fitness coach who then tried to open up his own business with not a lot of business acumen, and I've had really good people around me to help, but that's always and still is always scary when you're in uncharted waters. It was a very big change going from having the tracksuit on every day in a locker room, with in the sporting sense, but coming out to the corporate world and the business world has been the biggest change of my life, probably the most scary, but had really great support with Jerry and Paul along the way and staff along the way too. I always sort of say, when you're starting off there and I haven't got a marketing bone in my body, but I'm trying to market a business, when you finally get marketing experts or experts in their field in your team and in your business, it's like, you get the weight lifts off your shoulders a bit more when we got a bit of a saying there, we let the bakers bake the bread in our business. So they've been the challenges is the unknown and the change, but again, which usually turns into an opportunity and a positive in that when you don't win them all, but when they come off and you're slowly building your client base and you're slowly progressing and developing your business and your offer, and we've got a tech business, so it just keeps getting better and better. Those challenges can slowly turn into the positives, which is good as well.
Going back to the St Kilda experience, that there'd be no doubt a few listeners at the moment that were, might have gone through that challenge or currently going through at the moment. I know Essendon's copped a lot of pressure this year in the media, like you mentioned, where whether it be luck or whatever it might be, you have a few injuries in a intense period, and the pressure comes, and from the board as well as externally. How do you manage that individually if you're a coach going through that at the moment, but also as a team? What do you think is the best way to, do you review your process and make change? Do you stick fat to your process?
Yeah,
How do you sort
it's a
of,
good
what's your
point,
sort
Jack,
of
isn't it?
takeaways for that one?
I think the key, mate, is, and it's like any challenge in business, is stick together and trust. The minute you lose trust within your working team and people get thrown under the bus, then you're in a bit of trouble. So sticking together. Obviously, you review everything in what you've done, and not be pointing fingers and blame and stuff like that. Which ours was very minor. It was only a couple of weeks, and we recovered quite well, and business as usual after that. But yeah, stick to what you know. Everyone covers their areas and review and look for what might be going wrong or where things are at. One of the worst things you can do is stick your head in the sand and say, "Oh, it's not me, it's not us," and point blame elsewhere. Is cover your own backyard first, and no one's perfect. And then working together as a team. And I remember at Storm we lost about 4 or 5 in 2012 at the back end of the Origin phase. There, we obviously lost. We always have 4 or 5 players playing Origin who are away. That next tier of players need to step up, so their match load goes up. So then once the Origin players came back, and those players who had to fill that void had to step down, we had a lot of tired players, and we lost, I think, 4 or 5 in a row. And trying to freshen players up and reviewing all of that, that was challenging at the time. But then after that we won 10 in a row and ended up winning the premiership. So we worked what it was, stuck together, and got the results, and we got the championship and got the premiership cup at the end of the year. So it comes about by being open to what you need to do, trying not to catastrophize what it all is, communicate and stick together, and making sure that you got that connection with all of your team, and your staff mates as well. And I still struggle with this, but trying to switch off is a hard thing. Is once you leave work, really trying to work on having those positive coping strategies that you can switch off and looking after yourself. Part of the research that we've done with Swinburne University with Readiness, our business, is one of the major factors that have the greatest bearing on our well-being as human beings, both at work and away from work. And no surprise, sleep's number one. And then your positive coping strategies, hydration, nutrition, and exercise. I mean, it's all that old boring stuff that everyone hears, but it's the science, and it's there and it's true. So being able to have your positive coping strategies and implementing them into your daily routines and have a lot of connection. And as we know, Jack, we during COVID was the biggest test of lack of connection for most of us, wasn't it? So we can see the effect lack of connection and lack of communication has on our well-being. So those who I mean, there wouldn't be a fitness coach in the world who hasn't gone through injuries or poor performance when the heat's on you. If you've never gone through that, well, you'd be on your own, I'd say. So being able to stick to what be open and honest with how to look into what you're doing and be willing to modify and adjust what your workloads are, for example, but all while looking after your own well-being as well, and remembering that the more tired you are at work and flat you are at work, the flatter your staff who are under you or your players are going to be as well, because they look for you for motivation and drive.
Well said, mate. There's a few gems there that I think the ones that stood out to me, obviously sticking together as a team is critical when going through challenges, and not putting head in the sand, but owning, like you said, no one's perfect. So hopefully you develop that safe place in the organisation where people can talk up and own it. But I also like the fact that experience at Storm, where he went through that challenge in the middle of the year, which I imagine a lot of successful organizations, you're going to have challenges, but actually at the back end, it sort of sounded like it set you up and you got a lot of momentum from it,
Yeah,
with the learnings of how to manage fatigue and maybe developing a bigger squad during that period. So it's hard to think of at the time, but maybe those challenges that are actually going to be your best learnings, and you're going to become, the organization, the team's going to you're actually going to grow and be far better for facing that challenge. It's almost a
yeah,
positive thing that
yeah.
you're in it. It's just hard to feel that way at the time.
It is, mate, isn't it? It's just like, God, where's the but Jerry's been great. Jerry's got a lot of one-liners, and he always, he says, out of every crisis comes opportunity. So it's just how you shape your mindset with that. So so many times you hear of people and with yourself, gee, that was a tough time, but gee, I learned a lot out of it. I'm more resilient because of it. I can draw on that experience as well, and it's not like it's I'm 46 now. I certainly, you still have challenges at this age. It's not as if the older you get, those challenges don't come. It's just more your cope. Hopefully, your coping strategies have improved and your resilience has improved over time, and you know how to cope with it a little bit better and not jump at shadows as much as you did probably when you were younger. But as I said, it comes with experience, and a lot of that is self-learnt and all the rest. But having good people around you can lean on as well.
I guess at the end of the day, if it was all pretty bland every day, we probably wouldn't sign up for it. So
Be pretty, mate. It'd be pretty
yeah,
boring. As you and I were discussing off air, Jack. It's yeah, I've yeah, I'd hate to be in the same job at the same desk for 20 years, sort of thing. I'd get a bit bored. So even my weeks are pretty different in terms of I'm at different locations with sort of different roles and different jobs, which I really like. But there's a limit to it, trust me. But yeah, trying to take as much out of as many environments as you can and bring positive change is what I think what we're all about. Yeah.
going back to the topic in terms of athlete readiness and monitoring their well-being, um, there's clearly a balancing act of not overwhelming the athlete with all
Yeah.
these questionnaires and data and invasive techniques to get an idea of how they're going. You hear lots of different strategies. A simple handshake and checking in can be a good one. But yeah, what do you reckon your non-negotiables when let's just say you're building a program from scratch. You're the head of
Yep.
the department for performance medical, and the head coach is pretty keen on this holistic program and making sure that we've got a good finger on the pulse on how the athletes are going. Yeah, what would be your top 3 or 4 or 5 or one
Yeah,
or two
mate.
that
I
you'd bring
reckon.
in?
Well, we can sort of talk about a couple of aspects here, but certainly, checking in. We do this with Readiness now with our businesses. If we don't want to overload employees with too much data and checking, so and this was always been an issue in sport, hasn't it, Jack? You're trying to get some information out of players, some data out of players. So certainly in the sporting things sense, we sort of ran at about two check-ins on an app a week, so twice a week. Of you want them on and off in under a minute, but that captures the data certainly around cognitive ability, their muscle, their body soreness, then how they're going neurally as well, which and hormonal imbalances and hormonal testing as well, which doesn't have to be data collection, can be cortisols, and then checking in on sleep. I'll chat a little bit more about some non-physical ones as well out of our research, but the overarching aspect, and when we developed Readiness, when we built the app, I said, yep, we obviously need the science behind what we're doing, and we want some data collection, but we need a buddy system, because I'd lost count of how many sort of fires I'd hopefully had positive impact, or fires I'd put out over the years of just having a conversation with the player regarding physical and non-physical well-being. And then I said, so that buddy system, whether it's an official buddy system in an organization or an unofficial one, is super important, I think, to especially with the old blue collar middle-aged males, or certainly out in the real world or in the sporting sense, males tend to shut down pretty quick. But building that trust and having that ability to have open and honest and safe conversations with people, I think is huge. It's bigger, I think, than there's a lot of the data collection, which is still great, which is really important to do. So those wanting that human connection on their wellbeing journey, having having someone that they can talk to within the club is super important as well. When we started Readiness, we said, right, I said to Jerry, mate, if we're to simulate or bring the strategies out of elite sport in proactively assessing and intervening and educating the holistic well-being of players, we want to make sure we've got the science behind what we do. So we partner with Swinburne University Centre for Mental Health, and this is during COVID. So whilst we built the tech and the app, which Paul Francis and his team did really well, we gave us about 18 months to work with Swinburne on two major projects, which were, I wanted to know what are the major factors that have the greatest bearing on our well-being as human beings at work and away from work. So what are those factors? And there's about 20 or so of those. And once part two of the research was, now that we've identified these factors, what's the weighting of these factors? So we want to make sure that we're dealing with the big ticket numbers, and it's almost, I sort of give the old altitude analogy, Jack, that you can get 3 to 5% increases in fitness, loosely speaking, with some altitude training or whatever. But before you all jet off to do all the altitude camps and all that, you've got to make sure you've got first year and second and third year players can get a greater impact and improvement in their fitness by just staying in Australia and getting through session after session, week after week of solid training here. It's those players who are at the probably mid to late part of their career who are super fit and looking for those little 3 to 5% increases in performance. They will get the most benefit out of that. So it's sort of like that analogy there with these factors that we assess at Readiness is we want to make sure we're dealing with those factors that are going to bring about change or positive change. So that was the research, was what are these factors and what's the weighting of these factors. So and those sort of in a sporting sense, culture, leadership, work-life balance, the amount of support the organisation has for the players, work-life balance, and their clarity, and they've got really good role clarity within their team. They know what they're there for. Those sort of 6 non-physical type, bit left of field type factors have a huge bearing on the psychological well-being of the athlete. And what we do know with a stack of the research, certainly around the stress injury model, that psychological factors have a huge impact on injury as well. So how resilient and how competitive some players are has an impact on their psychological, therefore their injury factors. Also, their major and daily stresses that they have as well can have an impact on their injuries. And then the amount of support, the amount of positive coping skills, and how available the coping skills and available support is, has an impact on their psychological well-being, which has an impact on the injuries as well. So coming back to sort of taking a long way to answer this question, but yes, it's around the whole physical side of things. But a big take home out of, hopefully people can get out of today's chat, is that sort of monitoring and ensuring that you can get some feedback on how the players think the culture's going in the organisation, how they think the leadership and the support's going in the organisation. Are they getting enough work-life balance in there? Are they getting enough support from the organisation as well, with all things, their job and what they need to do? Their job demands comes back to the balance as well, and how clear is it? One of the big things that we find out in the business world is a lack of clarity within your role just has such an impact on your mood, for example, and your anxiety. So, and that comes back to that communication. So if the clarity in communication, everyone knows exactly what they need to be doing and where they are. And that, I come back to Melbourne Storm, was so good at that. Craig Bellamy's great at know your role, play your role, which is a great saying that is probably around more now, but I certainly first heard it from Craig, is that, everyone knows their role and play their role. Well, then we've got a hell of a lot better chance of performing really well and being ready to do what we need to do. And you're going to have a lot better chance with the individual well-being if you know exactly what your purpose is there and what you need to do.
Yeah. It sort of reminds me of we were part of a PhD study. The Demons was monitoring heart rate variability and using that as a bit of a guide of cognitive load. And there was always a particular player that popped up where their heart rate variability was low if they're in contention of selection. If they didn't know quite yet going into main training if they were
Yep.
going to
Yep.
get picked or were they going to be VFL, they're a fringe player. Yeah, just an interesting trend to monitor. It makes
Jack,
a lot of sense.
mate, it does. That's a great point. I remember, we'd be looking at the sleep, quality of sleep from the players, and certainly there were certainly trends along the way that a lot of players would have less quality or poor quality sleep the night before the review than the night before the game. So they're more stressed, especially if you've come off a loss and you probably haven't played well, but they're more stressed about the review than they are about performing on the game, which was really interesting. So again, some interventions and stuff were put in place once that knowledge came through, certainly in the way the reviews were conducted and stuff like that. But it's interesting and your example there as well. It's a great example of just the information, the takeaways we can get out of gathering a bit of data, gathering information out of players to improve the roadmap going forward. Yeah.
And you mentioned there was like 20 factors as part of the research, and you were looking at pinpointing what were the most impactful. Was there? You mentioned, I think there's a few there around support, role clarity, work-life balance, and culture. When I guess getting that feedback from the players, what do you reckon is the most effective? Is it a questionnaire, so it's private, they're doing it over their phone, or what's your process around that?
Data security is really important. Certainly, we see that out in the business world as well. Everyone, who's seeing my data? But yeah, it's a combination of both. I think it's as you'd know, Jack, as a S&C high performance rehab, certainly in the rehab space, you not only are you're their rehab coach, you're almost their well-being and their psyche as well, because you understand you're having a lot of conversations on the training track with them. So yes, getting as much information as quickly and as non-intrusive as possible through apps and checking surveys and stuff like that, a couple of times a week, bookending the week, see how they're pulling up after the game at that 48, 72-hour mark, and then obviously see what their mindset and how they're going, 48 hours pre-game is important. Having that buddy system, I think, is really important. Strong leadership in there, so the players who aren't, would rather have a conversation with someone than be filling forms out is always, and I think you can get just as much information out of conversations as well. And then timing what other testing you want to do, so you're not bombarding them too much with, trying to extract too much out of people. You drive them insane. But it's a fine balance, though, mate, isn't it? Is you want to tick all the boxes and get as much as you can to improve the program, but without making it an absolute data minefield. Or it's an in-house PhD thesis thing going on with all this. You'll soon lose the players. So you can subtly do it too, just in conversations, body language, how they're looking. The longer you've been with the players and the group, you'll pick up the little nuances of how they move, how engaged they are in meetings. If there's normally players who are quite talkative and they've been pretty quiet, how they're presenting themselves. Are they late to training? Just stuff that's out of the norm, I think can give you an insight into how they're tracking if they're not opening up that information. And then there's with that, there's getting the right person. There's plenty of opportunities to break the ice and have that conversation with players to get a bit more info on how they're tracking as well. But in terms of the research, Jack, we had from an individual factor or individual well-being point of view, coping strategies was one of the major ones. So it's looking at positive and negative coping strategies has a big influence on your well-being. Hydration, nutrition, exercise. Body's reaction to stress and anxiety was a big one as well. So we're looking at the symptoms of stress and anxiety. So appetite, pain, heart palpitations, that type of stuff. Sleep quality and quantity, two of the, again, that body and that sleep were the symptoms. And in terms of the sort of subjective stuff, your overall life satisfaction, how you're perceiving that. Energy looks at how engaged you are in what you're doing in your life. And it makes sense. If you're not really into or absorbed or engaged in what you're doing, you're probably not going to be busting out of your skin too much to improve. Your current state of mind, how exhausted you are, like how how are you thinking clearly, how you're feeling in the moment. So your mood's really important. So life satisfaction, energy, mind, mood, your social situation and social support, life satisfaction, and how resilient. So there's the sort of big factors that we got out of the research. And then being able to time, you don't want to being able to time those and when to pulse check those in is always important as well. So again, breaking them up so that you're not sitting there filling out 5-minute forms a couple of times a week. Really simple and easy ways, and quick ways to get information out's the key. Yeah. And some people love doing
like
it. I don't, but they do. Yeah.
the number scale, sort of 0 to 10, or is it like traffic light system? What do you think's the
Yeah, a bit of both, and we mix it
most
up.
effective?
Yeah, we mix it up with different ways to ask different questions. They're pulsed in at different occasions as well. Throughout a month or throughout a week. But yeah, the shorter and sharper, and even if it's simple, in the sporting sense, you've got a posterior and anterior view of the body, point to where you saw. So they might have multiple spots instead of answering questions. So again, it's super quick, super easy, and the results all get brought into your sports science or your physio or whoever, high performance, and all collated from there. And I mean, then there's a million and one ways. You've got all your acute to chronic stuff. You've got all your symmetry left and right side in the gym. But I don't think, as we know, Jack, there's no one golden. If there's one golden number or one golden method of getting an absolute look at someone's well-being, well, then whoever's invented it would be a gazillionaire. So I always look at it. There's a million pieces of the pie. You've got your subjective well-being. You've got your heart rate stuff, variability stuff that you were talking about before. You've got cortisols. You've got cognitive. Let's have a look at how they're tracking cognitively, neurally, hormonal, sleep. Those factors that we spoke about as well around culture and org support. And you've got metabolic fatigue. You've got making sure you've got that human connection and that communication. So you've got all these millions of different pieces of the pie of gathering information and getting information out of players and then body language as well, that will come into making that decision on what you do with them. So it's working out what are the ones that work for your team based on your personnel you've got in there as players, but also what your physios and docs and coaches want to learn the most and want to use the most, and coming up with your own model. Don't be afraid to use your own model that works. We did it at the Saints with great success, sort of from 214 to 218, and had really good results with really low soft tissue and being able to run out games pretty well. So yeah, don't be afraid to do what works for your team. It doesn't have to be what the textbooks say every time. Yeah.
With the buddy system, does that mean it's pretty open, like the access to, if you and I were buddied up and you're my buddy, you would have access to my answers, and then you would check in, seeing, and that's a player to player.
Player to player, yeah. So we've got a similar model in sport. We've got a model of this now in Readiness, is that you can have multiple buddies. You can buddy for multiple people. You can go mate for mate. But obviously you choose that person based on trust. And so, you could be, you and I are best mates at the club. Neither of us are a counsellor or a psych or anything like that, but we, most about what's going on with me. You would be the only person who sees my data, sort of thing. And we've got a messaging system on there that you can have honest and safe conversations on there. It could be, Jack, struggling a bit, mate. Can we go and grab a coffee at 2:00 today? You and I can have that secure conversation on our app. And it's no different out in that real world. One of the worst things I think I've seen in sport and you see in business is buddy systems set up by the org chart. So, there's obviously I've been in situations where I wouldn't want to be having. I didn't really want that closer relationship with who I reported into for various reasons. There's been a lot where I absolutely have been fantastic people, sort of thing. So forced buddy systems via the org chart is one of the worst things I think you can do. It'll either lead to lack of communication or just not telling the truth. What a number of big organisations we work with who are very successful have, say, 100 staff, and they've got 20 trained mental health first aiders, for example, and you can choose any one of the 20 sort of thing to be your buddy. And that works really well as well. So giving people choice is really important. So the safer and the more control you put into their hands of who they want to buddy with, the better the plan's going to be, and the more accurate and the more communication you're going to get, and better performance and better readiness you're going to get out of your staff or your players. Yeah.
Have you been involved in an organisation that doesn't have any sort of wellbeing check-ins, and you know, your initial reaction is like, "Geez, this is different to what I'm used to," but
Yes.
you saw it
Yeah.
was quite effective?
Yeah. Great question, Jack. Again, certainly coming out of sport, mate, as you'd realise, we're in a bubble, aren't we? Like everything's. Yeah, I certainly. If you need to see the physio, the doc, the wellbeing person, the psych, the coach, they're just in the next office pretty much. So your accessibility is through the roof in elite sport. Out in the real world was probably almost, mate, one of the biggest shocks coming out into the real world. Speaking with some HR managers who you just go, wow, there's just nothing there. Like there's no EAP or employee assistance programs available. There's just absolutely nothing. Especially, manufacturing, blue collar organisation seems to be there was a lack, and that was only 5 years ago. But certainly now there's been a huge shift in making sure that organisations have the appropriate wellbeing programs in place, and it's actually legislation now. So there's a new thing called psychosocial hazard legislation that's come out since COVID. So basically, the mental health of a lot of Australians and around the world had dropped a lot during COVID. And one of the legislations is like the physical OH&S Act. You got to wear your fluoros and your high vis on work sites. There's, from a physical point of view, there's the mental health version of that out now called the psychosocial hazards legislation that applies to sporting clubs as well. So Victoria is the last state to actually bring this legislation in, which is monitored by WorkSafe. But basically now organisations need to be collecting data, proactively intervening and assessing and providing support and education and resources across 14 psychosocial hazards, which a number of them we've mentioned today in today's chat around sort of culture and role clarity and job demands and stuff. So what we've been doing in sport, Jack, and probably taking it for granted in terms of assessing players, getting data, having a look at it, intervening, educating, adjusting our workloads, doing all that model now is legislation from a mental health point of view in businesses, which is a great thing. So that's an example of sort of positive change there, and that's certainly where we've headed with a lot of our readiness. Our readiness model is which we were doing anyway. We've just ramped it up a bit in terms of the psych hazards for workplaces, which applies to sporting organisations as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Another almost good point in terms of challenging times with COVID, and some good that come from it. Yeah.
Great point.
Wary of time, mate. It's nearly coming to over an hour. So last few questions just to start to wrap it up. Work life, any pet peeves, anything that fires you up?
Work life. Early days, certainly, mate. Yeah, having to put on the old the shirt, the jacket, and I'm like you, Jack. I had 20 years, mate, of shorts and t-shirt at work, and at most it got to a hoodie and the trackie. So I still can't get my head around having to put the old chino pants on, all the slacks and the shirt and the jacket, mate. That's probably and I refuse to I refuse to wear have the old corporate shave either, mate. No, I enjoy no massive peeves at the moment. It's I must admit, coming out of sport, Jack, I got the weekends back, so that's not a peeve. That's a positive thing, mate. That I've enjoyed. I still cram the same amount of hours into about Monday to Friday, but having my own business, I can certainly do school pickups and stuff like that, which certainly aren't pet peeves. But no, all I do miss the fact for certainly my last sort of 10 years, my office was just off the gym. So being able to jump out and just jump on the bike and do my sweat sessions and I miss that. So, that accidental exercise I miss a bit, sort of trying to find time. I still Still get to the gym 2 or 3 times a week, more from a cardio point of view and a few weights. But probably a pet peeve there is the accessibility of exercise is a bit harder now than what it was in my previous life, mate. Yeah.
Yep. And what about a favorite way to spend a day off? I guess on the weekends.
Mate, at the moment, what have I got? A 12 and nearly 16-year-old. So it's a lot of kids sport, Jack. So it's taxi service this time of year. Assistant coach of my son's footy team, which I really enjoy. Watching my daughter play basketball is great. But yeah, sort of it's from about 3 o'clock onwards on a Sunday. It's probably not off, mate. Bit of couch time and won't get ready for the week ahead. But uh, yeah, a lot of kids sport at the moment. I'm at that stage of life with the kids where downtime or weekends is pretty much taken up by that at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. And what about do you have one opinion or belief that you hold that goes against sort of the mainstream thinking, or challenges popular consensus?
Um. Oh. Yes and no. Like I've always sort of lived by the old saying, "Let the bakers bake the bread." Um, being yeah, I've come across a lot of people in sport and in business who try to do it all or are somewhat probably insecure to not let to in letting experts come in and do their job. I've sort of always found, certainly at Readiness, we get people in to show us what to do, not for us to show them what to do. So it's sort of back to that. I think I gave that marketing example at the start there, but providing. I'm just really big on providing the environment for people to come in to be able to do what they do best. I think is key, and not being insecure in your role that you're trying to make stuff up just to save face or anything like that. So yeah, big believer in letting get people know how to do a certain part of the job better, get them in, and the overall result will be better for the team and better for the business and better for your department. So let the bakers bake the bread, Jack. I reckon that can be hopefully a lot of in some people's way of thinking, but it's probably against a number of people's thinking as well. Can be taken either way. Yeah, yep.
Yeah, no, well said, mate. And final question: what are you most excited about? Obviously, that over the midway portion of 2025, what's on the horizon? What are you most excited about
Keep
first?
keep developing the business, mate. Would be is a big one. Keep sort of that's been the baby. Sort of keep filing that through and uh, yeah, support the kids and the family all the way through, mate. And might get back into sport one day down the track. Just looking forward with a lot of optimism, mate, of what's ahead. Yeah, thinking positively going forward of opportunities that can be taken and exploring any opportunities that come through. But yeah, keep developing the business, keep happy and healthy family, and yeah, keep punching forward, big fella. I think that's the key.
Fantastic. Yeah, well, it's been fantastic to have you on, Simon, and share your journey today in high performance sport as well as in business. And yeah, I've got a few pages of notes of some gems, mate. So I really appreciate you having diving into athlete readiness, but also for staff as well, some coping strategies for anyone that's looking to get the most out of themselves and taking on, I guess, that ever growth sort of mentality and how to manage their well-being as well to perform at their best level. But for those that have got some follow-up questions and they want to check out Readiness, where's the best place to connect?
I'm on LinkedIn, so you can have a look there, readiness.com.au, and yeah, you'll find all our details and connections through there, mate. So yeah, send anything you need or any information, any questions, yeah, send them through for sure.
Perfect. We'll add the links in the show notes. So
Yeah,
those
perfect.
driving or they'll be
Yeah,
able
I'll
to
give
easily access from
and
there.
Jack will have my email address too, so Jack will put that in there as well. Easy.
Yeah, yeah, perfect. Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks again, Simon, and thanks
Good
for
on you,
everyone that's
Jack.
tuned in live. If you tuned in halfway through, this will be on our podcast, this episode in about 6 weeks, but you can listen to it on YouTube. that recording's now living in there, so you can listen to the very start. Our next live chat is with Jared Hoare, who's a high points coach for the Adelaide Pros, which will be 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on Thursday,